Well, you know, advances in exploration and production technology have brought an abundance of natural gas to the market. Now the focus is on increasing demand. Now, several leading E&P companies, including and particularly those represented up here on stage, are putting considerable resources behind development of a more robust NGV market. Please join me in welcoming our moderator for this session, David Hill, NGV America's Vice Chairman and also Vice President of Operations at Encana Natural Gas. David and his panel will be discussing the role of gas producers are playing in expanding the use of NGVs and some of the initiatives that they've undertaken to build greater use of gas in the transportation sector. David?
Thanks, Steve. Welcome, everybody. We're going to do this hopefully like a real panel and not have any PowerPoints, so you can relax, and we won't read stuff to you. But I got a list of questions, and I didn't really give the panel any time to understand the questions. I told them last night, here's what I'm going to ask, and to stimulate the discussion and get us going, and then we'll kind of go back and forth with the audience. So hopefully some of these questions and answers will stimulate some thoughts from your perspective, and you can ask the panel what you think as well. So I think we do have people with mics, so we're going to kind of ask a few starter questions, a little softball or two for them, and then we'll ask some tough ones and see what they're doing. But Steve said it right. You know, many people think from a producer's perspective we did our job. So my question to this panel is, okay, you found a lot of natural gas. The price is low. It's sustainable. It looks like it's here long term. So what are you doing, you know, in the natural gas vehicle markets? So what are the three most significant things that you could do as a producer group? So my question to them is, what are the top three things producers could and should be doing to stimulate the natural gas vehicle market? And can I get to pick the first one to go? And I'll get to pick Lynn, since she's got her back to me. Oh, I guess I should introduce everybody, right? A good panel host here would do that, instead of just jumping right into it. But let me get into the actual titles, because first tab here on your right, or your left, my right, is Lynn, Lyon, Manager of Strategic Projects, Domestic Operations for Pioneer Natural Resources. Next to Lynn is Frank Chapel, Director, Natural Gas Transportation Fuels, Apache Corporation. Next to Frank is Norman Herrera, Director of Market Development, Chesapeake Energy Corporation. And last but not least is Curtis Rueter, Manager, LNG and CNG Development, Noble Energy, Inc. So one thing that's different is I've never heard these kind of titles from E&B producers before. All of you have very interesting titles that really go to my first question is, well, what is it that producers should and could be doing in this space to stimulate the NGV market? So I'll go back to now you, Lynn, my softball.
I think the first thing we're doing pretty well at is leading by example, trying to show that we believe in our products and that we're willing to test them out by purchasing trucks, being out on the forefront, purchasing our trucks, trying new things with our rigs, and being educators and communicators.
Okay. All right, good. Frank, I'll just go down the line.
Well, I definitely echo what Lynn spoke about. Our management very much wanted us to lead by example, so we're transforming our fleet. We're putting in supporting fueling infrastructure. We've even started a vehicle incentive program so that our employees can take ownership of this and also spread the word about the great benefits of natural gas as a transportation fuel. So again, the leading by example and going out talking to fleets and trying to educate the public to all these benefits is, we think, a real high priority to make this industry as successful as we know it's going to be.
David, I'd say, you know, just like all producers here, Encana included, you know, we've led in creating the sustainable supply, so we do have to lead again in creating demand. So for our company's perspective, Chesapeake purchases around 1,000 vehicles a year, and as we do that, we're on the goal of converting the entirety of our fleet to natural gas. So for us, that means getting all 1,000 converted. Right now, we're at 30% of that large fleet that we operate, with a goal of reaching 50% by the second quarter of 2013. But right now, the impediment is infrastructure. So the top three things I'd say is ensuring the suppliers here in the room are successful by placing product in markets that we're all in. For us today, that's places like South Texas, places like the Marcellus and the Utica, and then western Oklahoma. So to the degree that we can accelerate infrastructure development would be one thing we can do by converting our fleet. Secondly is empowering those OEMs that have come out with product here in 2013 by buying them and ensuring that they can meet their sales targets. And third thing is, I think something interesting that, codes and standards work is something that maybe doesn't get as much service as an E&P company that can assist the goals of groups like the Clean Vehicle Educational Foundation, or groups that are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the policy side. Taxation is a big point that's happening today across the market. So supporting the sort of policy that is the backbone of everything we're doing, supporting the OEMs that have come to line now this year with product, and then finally accelerating our development in our own fleet conversion would be the three things I'd say.
Okay, thanks. Curtis?
I'd go back to the first point you made, David, in terms of we've created this sustainable supply, and we certainly have. But there's still a challenge to continue to do that in a way that's environmentally responsible, in a way that maintains the industry's license to operate in the areas where we produce oil and natural gas. Certainly we can do that in a way that creates the price structure that drives the adoption of NGVs, but we've got to continue to do that going forward and be responsible about that as an industry. Rich alluded to some of the hydraulic fracturing challenges earlier, and that's something we as an industry have been out front addressing. We think we've dealt with that a lot of ways through chemical disclosure with Frac Focus. We think the states regulate it very well because geology is specific in all the individual states, and each state regulatory body knows that the best to be able to make those rules. And we have a long history of operating and producing oil and gas in a way that does not impact groundwater, that protects the environment. But then beyond that, I would echo what everyone else has said about leading by example, driving the use of natural gas within our own fleets, within our own supply chain. We've been working very hard at starting to convert our operator trucks, our pumper trucks, our 3/4-ton pickup trucks, as well as using LNG for drilling, and now working more and more with our water haulers and others in our supply chain to convert them to using natural gas in their fleets as well.
Okay, good, thanks. So I heard lead, participate in the market, participate and assist in education, and I like what you said last too, Curtis, is responsible development. I think we hit on that early this morning, so we can do those things. So I was going to pick on Frank here. Frank's been in this industry a little longer, and he's seen this thing come and go, as many of us in the audience have seen the industry come and go. So from the producer perspective, and we'll ask each of the panelists this, but what's different this time around? Okay. Why is this real? And what's different? What are the things that you see? And just want to reach out to you, Frank, because I know you have an opinion here. So.
Right. Well, I guess I'd have to preempt this by saying it's a wonderful time to be in the environment we're in now. I go back to the very early 90s where we got all excited. We had the Clean Air Act amendments in 1990 and then the Energy Policy Act in 92. And I was with Amoco at the time, and we were really excited that natural gas as a transportation fuel was really going to happen. And back then, the really only active players were some select local distribution companies that were really doing what all of us are doing now. They were leading by example and converting their vehicles, and a lot of them had their own fueling stations. None of the conventional fueling integrated oil companies were doing anything, but Amoco at the time had the largest natural gas reserves, private natural gas reserve holdings in North America. So we had a selfish interest to see natural gas as a transportation fuel evolve as an additional customer segment for us. So we started working we had 38 states with stations, so in a lot of the non-attainment areas that the EPA had designated, we worked very closely with the local governments, et cetera, and added small stations to these Amoco stations with one dispenser for natural gas. And we had the Field of Dreams business strategy. If we build it, they will come. And nobody came, and as David said, the big difference between then and now is just dramatic. At the time we were doing this in the early 90s, we thought we had 35 years of natural gas left. We had no economics. We had maybe about a 10% fuel savings differential between the conventional fuels and natural gas. So when we went out and talked to the fleet managers and the other prospective customers, they would look at the payback analysis, and in all cases, they would never get their money back before they had to replace their vehicles. So with the exception of a big emphasis with environmental companies that wanted to have a message, that was really the only customer segment that was doing anything at all. And so the LDCs were leading by example. None of the producers you see here today were active and involved in this at all. We had very, very limited infrastructure, which was a huge problem. And even worse, we had the huge chicken and egg problem whereby as we put stations in Atlanta, Indianapolis, wherever, we had to entice companies to come in to actually provide the conversion support because we had none. We'd put a station in, but we had no ability to have customers come into the station without the conversion facilities. So those were the huge big differences. California was leading by example then, and that was really all environmentally motivated. So economics wasn't there, supply wasn't there, technology wasn't that good. So we just, a day and night example of lack of success then, and an exciting time now where we have all those market attributes.
Sure. Thanks, Frank. Norman, what do you think? What's different here, and what's making it different this time around?
You know, I'd just invite everyone in the audience just to think of the road between Pittsburgh into Morgantown. If you're in Pennsylvania traveling into West Virginia, 20 years ago, you didn't see the Schlumberger truck or the Halliburton truck or the Baker Hughes truck or the Chesapeake truck or the EQT truck. So really it's that involvement now from companies that are highly capitalized that are willing to risk some of their capital into this. So whether it's bridging some RD&D needs that the industry needs, whether it's partnering with someone who traditionally wouldn't have been a partner on the convenience store side, or whether it's really saying a true need is new nozzles or new technology support at the compression point or at the point of delivery. You know, those are all things that as an industry we can support to help expedite that. So I think going back to that road in Pennsylvania, 20 years ago, that certainly there was natural gas there for 300,000 years. It's been there for a long time, but now the ability of extracting that, creating a market above the ground and support from that market is true. So I'm just excited that we're part of an industry that is supporting that effort, that now has brought into the play not just the Californias and the Utahs of the world, but new markets like in Ohio and in Pennsylvania and West Virginia and New York.
Good, thank you. Curtis, got anything to? They covered a lot, so but you got anything to add?
I would just add a couple of things. One, building or further on one of Frank's points about how things have changed in terms of the technology. 20 years ago, the engine technology wasn't there. We had carbureted engines. You fed the natural gas in with the air intake, and the performance was poor. Fuel injection has changed that dynamic to where now the engine performance for a natural gas engine is basically identical to that for a gasoline engine. So we've taken that complaint off the table. I think the other part then is just the collaboration you see around with this group and with the producer community in terms of the work that Enga's done to push this, and the way we've all collaborated and worked together as producers to help move the ball forward on this. The things like the ag campaigns, the way we've worked cooperatively in different corridors to help spur the development of infrastructure. I think we're not just leaving it to a single company to figure it out anymore. We're all working together on it to move the ball forward.
Great. Lynn, I'll let you finish up there with one or two that we might have missed.
I think the main thing is, not having been part of the first round of this, feeling very fortunate to be on the second round of it, is that we're playing offense now, and we understand that one group can't do it alone. So as Norman was saying with the different groups, it's a real great opportunity for us to collaborate with many people. And our industry is realizing we've got to go out and understand all the stakeholders, and that we need everybody in this room to be successful for this to be successful. So really taking the time to reach out to a broader group, understand how the small business person who's trying to set up a shop, to a large convenience store, to a company that wants to use this for their fleets. So really having a bigger, bolder offense.
Bigger, bolder offense like that. So I heard the supply is different. I mean, that's obvious with the price. We now have an economic case that's new, that we really were fighting for the economic case there. Technology has improved considerably. I think this room has helped develop that technology. There's no doubt about it, the suppliers. And another thing is the producers are playing a different role. They were not present necessarily last time around, and helping and collaborating in the market to move the market forward. So appreciate that. So each of you guys here on the panel have been very active in natural gas vehicle market. You're active members of NGVA, you're active members of ANGA, America's Natural Gas Alliance. You're starting and initiating and participating on local and regional initiatives. So from your experience, what are the three barriers we still have in front of us? I mean, some people talked about it this morning. We've talked about it a little bit yesterday. But share with us from all this engagement that each of you have, what do you see as our top three barriers? So we had fives this morning, so I'm going to go to threes. So just, you don't have to give me three, but let's develop what the top three are from your all's perspective. So you're all looking at me anxiously. Norma.
Sure.
Don't
I know we could talk for hours on this, and there's a lot of exciting projects that I guess we could all collaborate in. I know in participating both on the political front at the different state capitals and then just in panels across the country, I think there's still that connection point that our fleets, the 3/4 ton truck and the van, are something that fleet managers can make the economics on their own and make that conversation point. But on the consumer vehicle, that's something that certainly we would hope would be accelerated, right? And I think a few things are to our benefit. One is on the regulatory side with CAFE and fuel economy standards. So that's continued effort there. Continued effort on home fueling and achieving a unit there that's priced affordably, that's reliable, and that's in the marketplace with the distribution channel. And if you do those two things, and then you can understand the tank packaging side, then you've created a model there that has regulatory support, that has a unit there in the home, that has a price point on the vehicle that would ensure that when you're speaking to an elected official or even to the spouse of the Schlumberger driver, you have a sustainable market. So I think that's a sort of approach or a strategy that's out there that I think as an industry would succeed and allow us to be able to continue to accelerate development at convenience stores, continue to accelerate development. When someone looks at our industry on hydraulic fracturing or on drilling, we can say, well, here's the end use. It's a light-duty consumer vehicle that you can save at the pump. So that's something that I know I could point to right away. The other thing, education on the dealer body. I know our company's been involved in a lot of outreach to whether it's the Business Preferred Network or the Business Central Network or the Business Link Network with the big three, is ensuring that when that purchaser at the retail level goes to the dealership, that dealer body is aware and educated of how to sell the new Ram or the new Silverado or the F-250. So that's something that I think can assist and grow the market. Last but not least is, again, going back to that taxation point. I think that's a bottleneck that we need to put our heads together on, just finding out, do we move all from a sticker approach to something that's an excise, or how can we resolve that, especially when states like Texas and Pennsylvania and West Virginia are looking at that. We want to have one national approach, hopefully, that can ensure this market grows fairly and fastly.
I knew Norman would give me 5 instead of 3. So, thank you, Norman. But good point. So I want to just build onto that, right? Is there a couple more that we're missing? Again, from you guys are boots on the ground, your teams are boots on the ground. You're helping move this market. So, Kurt, anything to add to that, Curtis?
Norman addressed a lot of issues with the light-duty market, so I'll go a little bit different angle. I'll focus on it from a very kind of narrow perspective of how Noble views it in terms of implementing it in our own fleet and in our own supply chain, rather than the more global perspective, since Norman covered that so well. We've been in this chicken and egg issue for years between product and infrastructure. And now where we operate, we've really kind of eliminated most of that. There's enough product coming out now from the OEMs with the 3/4 ton trucks that the product is available. And in Colorado, where Noble has the bulk of its domestic U.S. operations, we now have 4 stations going in this year. So we've kind of taken those two off the table now, and we're really focused on implementation, both in our fleet and other E&P fleets and other potential users of that infrastructure. So I think we've kind of moved in that local setting, at least beyond that, to how do we implement it and how do we start scaling this so that the people who made those early investments in product and in infrastructure get a fair return. We've had a lot of people put some money up. Now we've got to start buying enough natural gas that they make some money back from the money that they've invested. Then the other piece, in terms of some of our water haulers and other LNG truck users, there's still an LNG supply piece, I think, that we see that still needs some work. Is going to be a continuing challenge. But I think, again, we're seeing lots of companies start to respond to that and start to supply LNG, but I think that's still one area where we have a little more work to do.
Well, good, thanks. Frank? What?
You know, I think to pick up on what Curtis was saying, one of the big concerns that I perceive out there, it's been really great with Cummins Westport and all of the heavy-duty truck manufacturers coming into play here and ramping up like we never thought would happen because of the engine technology. And as was talked about earlier, we've got clean energy with hopefully 150 LNG stations by year end next year, and the Shell Travel Centers of America announcement on LNG. But my real concern is we've got a lot of heavy-duty fleet vehicles out there now, but from an infrastructure standpoint, none of us are really building stations to accommodate that. We don't have the turning radiuses, and a lot of these even Class 8 trucks are really going, if they're back to base, a lot of them are going CNG rather than LNG. And unless they have their own fueling stations, they're going to be looking for area fueling stations, and typically we don't have the high flow transit dispensers or the compression capacity that's being currently built by the industry to really accommodate that. And I can see that as a real obstacle that I think is going to be overcome as the demand increases. But right now I don't see a lot of attention being played to that particular customer segment. The other thing I think that Norman talked about on the light duty segment, if we can come out with a wonderful home fueling appliance that's going to be less expensive and maybe better flow rate and very little maintenance, very dependable, we're going to be able to provide the OEMs with tremendous more demand that hopefully is going to provide a lot more makes and models that the community, the typical consumer is going to want, which also brings me to maybe the other obstacle that I perceive, and that's strictly the high cost of conversions. Hopefully technology is going to bring all that down now, but unless you're a high vehicle mileage user, the huge amount of passenger vehicles out there never get a payback. So we really need to get the cost of conversion down and maybe a less expensive home fueling appliance, so they don't have to wait for our companies to come out with $1 million or $1.5 million fast fill station to support them. They can go with gasoline or CNG and fuel at home overnight. And I think that's going to be a real game changer when that comes to market. And I think we're optimistic that will happen. So I hope and believe that technology is going to bring down the cost of conversions, and also all the OEM models that are starting to hit now is a remarkable, wonderful thing. And I think with more economies of scale and maybe with some tank technology, we're going to see economics really even more significantly improve. I'd also want to mention that unlike before, if you look at about the last 5 years of price differential between the conventional fuels and natural gas versus gasoline or diesel, natural gas has been priced on average at least 30 to 45% below that on a very consistent basis. And I think all the experts seem to think this differential will continue or even expand. So we need to get the word out. I think we're doing a good job on federal and state government advocacy. Many of us are in this room are dealing with fleets. And I was real happy to hear Tim Maroney talk about the messages, because my frustration is I don't believe we're getting the message out at all to the public. We could all go out on the street right now. Most people are going to think we're talking propane. So we really need to have a focused campaign to let the general public really understand all the wonderful attributes that natural gas does from the standpoint of American and economic and abundant and all the wonderful story we have to tell. I don't think we're doing that well in the general public sector, and I think that's a real challenge.
Good. Good stuff there. Lynn, anything we missed there?
I just have one specific one, and that's the availability of LNG in the central U.S., in the Texas area. You know, we have some on the East Coast and on the West Coast. We need additional liquefaction plants in the central U.S. With the Willis plant down till the end of the year, you know, that's a risk we're trying to manage. Everybody's LNG has increased in the central U.S. now for the next several weeks. So as we're trying to get this up and running, we need more specifically more opportunities for competition in LNG in the central U.S.
Good, good. Well, I'm going to toss it out to you all, but I'll summarize while you're thinking of your questions. But what, you know, it's interesting we're not hearing the same old barriers. I turn these around into opportunities, so what you guys have mentioned, new markets, you know, the light-duty consumer fleet. We need some product development and home fueling. We need to get our natural gas vehicle costs down, whether it's through tank design and better integration of the engine, chassis, and conversion kits. Regulatory, we talked about that. Storage and efficiency, education, you know, into our supply chain, making sure we're ready, the dealerships are ready to interface with the customer. I think that was a good one, as well as messaging, you know, an opportunity, I think we talked about. The heavy-duty fueling and the supply of LNG. Those are some things that we really are seeing this market transition, and those things you guys are bringing up is demonstrating the market's transition. We're not talking about chicken and the egg as much, so, right, Rich? So let me throw it out, and hopefully you guys might have a harder ball to throw out here to these guys. So somebody give us a challenge. Always, Rich. If you could just state your name, company, and then if you direct it to an individual, go ahead and shoot it.
Oh, I told Norm I was going to cut his legs out from under him anyway, but it's John Alexander from the City of Corpus Christi Gas Department. And doing the CNG research, we try to do the hub and spoke like they talked about, try to get where somebody can get from Corpus Christi to somewhere else in Texas. And you draw the line on the map and you see that some good wide spot in the road, but then the local distribution company has small lines, no pressure, but we know that there's a transmission line or a gathering line from one of your companies there. What is the stumbling block for someone that here would want to put in a CNG station out in the remote area where it's needs to be so that the transportation goes, to tapping your line and buying gas from you? Can you see any stumbling blocks, or is it just something that would work?
That's a great question, and I think you've got the right people up here to maybe talk about that. So did you guys hear the questions? Like, we have supply lines, gathering lines out in the field. Sometimes there's no LDC lines in these more, I won't say remote communities, but communities off the highway, if you will. Is there an ability to collaborate and purchase natural gas off our gathering lines? What are the things they need to know about our gathering lines, our gas quality, et cetera? So I'll let you, any of you guys want to step in?
You know, I'll touch on just one issue we ran into, looking at actually something somewhat similar to that. I mean, there is the issue of gas quality. You need to have it downstream of a gas processing plant before you compress it, so that all the heavier hydrocarbon liquids have been taken out. But beyond that, there can be a stumbling block with your state Public Utility Commission regulations in terms of allowing those kinds of direct sales off lines. We had actually a situation where we were building a new office in Greeley, and there was a high pressure line that operated by another company that we thought, oh, we'll tap into to put our CNG station in there, and only to discover as we checked into it more that we weren't allowed to do that because that was not the local distribution company's line, and we needed to run a line from the local distribution company line, which was much further away and at much lower pressure. So there can be some regulatory barriers to doing that.
Okay.
I'd only say, gathering, transmission, and distribution lines. So gathering lines that are going from the wellhead that a company like Chesapeake or Apache takes from the wellhead to a transmission line that then would be operated by another third party that would then distribute into a final distribution line. So there's three different ways that gas is carried. So on the upstream side, companies like ours would either have to petition the IRS to have a private letter ruling that allows us to sell our gas to a third party in certain bulk sales agreements. Or on the transmission side, it's ensuring that equipment can support a high pressure transmission line, have the gas quality points, and if you're an Energy Transfer Partner or a Kinder Morgan line or companies like that are involved, I think that is a business development opportunity for them. Finally, if it's talking at the very end, at the gathering line with the local utility, that if they're not there, then it would be that transmission line that sometimes the equipment would have to support that. Sometimes that is benefited to you because of lower compression costs. But again, it's a marriage of ensuring the equipment can support that and the incremental cost of having the gas and the quality that's needed be one that's there. But I don't necessarily believe that that's any of our companies, since we're upstream to that. And do not manage a transmission type company. I know, David, you're probably also someone else good to answer that specific point of gathering to transmission and how that would affect someone maybe in Corpus.
Yeah, I'll chime in too, but anybody else? You're good? I mean, we've actually got a couple stations. I think, Frank, you actually have a couple stations pulling off your lines, high pressure lines. It's really about gas quality is the first step. And some of our lines are pre-treatment, so before the gas plant. We'd rather get it off the tailgate of a gas plant. Typically, that's the point of sale. We're at the tailgate of a gas plant. We don't own that plant. And they rather have a point of sale and transfer there into an intrastate or an interstate pipeline. And tapping into an interstate pipeline is a challenge, regulatory and cost. But we've also tapped into an intrastate line with the company that moves that gas. And it was just about education, about what your needs are, about how much volume you're taking, and negotiating a fair gas price. And we found it worked. But it's about communicating, finding the right guy to talk to or the right person at the company to talk to. And I know there's somebody else in the audience saying, well, Dave, they don't really need the pipeline. They could take LNG and make CNG out of it if you really don't have a pipeline there or you can't get access to a pipeline. So I'm sure there's 3 or 4 companies here thinking, I have the answer to that. It's making CNG from LNG. A little more expensive, but you do have the ability to do that.
David, just a quick comment on the fueling station end of it. I've been just amazed at the high cost of the hot taps and the pipeline extensions. It just really makes the station economics really difficult because you're talking in some cases $200,000 to $400,000 just to get gas to your station, and in addition to that, you just can't make the economics work that well. So that's been a real challenge in some cases. And then the other thing is, in many cases, we don't have really CNG rates for the gas, which means on the transportation piece, the transportation's costing us greatly higher than the gas cost. So we have a real disparity between the 4 states that we have stations in. It's just amazing on the cost of operations because of the transportation costs as well as what we encounter trying to get gas to the compression station. So I'm hoping that as a collaboration over time we can get special maybe CNG transportation tariffs to help promote the industry that really aren't there now in some states.
And that's the barrier I think you're bringing up. So other questions? Rich has got the mic.
You mentioned, that's not my question, but you don't have to move LNG. You can move CNG. It's not that far. I mean, there are a whole bunch of companies that are now in the mobile fueling business.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
Yeah, you don't need the LNG.
There's
All
some
right.
new tube trailers is your point.
Tube trailers.
Mother-daughter concept that's been around for a long time.
And in some countries, that's the model.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of evolving now here for us. You have 5 companies up there, and you have 5 different strategies in terms of what your company's role is with respect to putting in stations or getting stations put in. Can you just each talk about your philosophies?
You went to my 5th question. That's perfect. Thank you. And it actually definitely builds off the question. So when it comes to infrastructure, that was one of the questions, is how are each of your companies participating directly or indirectly, and why? I mean, you mentioned something about tax and the IRS letter rolling, Norman. So let's flesh that out a little bit, because I think each of us do have a different approach for different reasons. So let's flesh it out. So Lynn, from a LNG or CNG fueling infrastructure, what is your company's strategy or tactics?
Well, I think most people that have met me know that my passion is the Texas Triangle. So we've taken an important part of the center of the U.S. and said, how are we strategically going to get this set up? Those of us in Dallas, we think the whole world kind of revolves around us. So, how do you get to the West Coast? How do you get to the East Coast? How do you get north to Winnipeg? How do you get south to Mexico City? And that connectivity, we've really put a lot of time into trying to learn about the fleets and the needs of that general area and how we can build out really what's in our backyard there in Texas. So that's been, how do we just find one area that we can focus on, make it a reality, and then build from there?
So your support is more collaborative. You're not building, paying for, and constructing and retailing.
We want to see other people successful in that space.
Great. Okay, Frank, what about you?
Well, from an Apache Corporation perspective, we started transforming our fleet about 4 years ago, and our objective is to have 80% of our roughly 1,000 Chevrolet Silverado pickup trucks converted by the end of 2015. And of course, that was a catch-22. We're in a lot of remote field area locations in the 4 states we operate in, which meant we also had to build supporting fueling stations. So I'm quite pleased that this has been a wonderful year. We're going to have 20 fueling stations operational by year end. 6 of those will be public access. And our private field office stations are also open to any fleets in the area with commercial bulk sales agreements. So I really call them semi-public. So we're really trying to promote the industry, not only to support fueling of our own transformation, but also any other fleets in the area that would like to come in. And in addition to that, we've got 6 public access stations that support our employee vehicle incentive program, as well as anyone else in those areas, which are primarily in the bigger metropolitan areas like Tulsa and Lafayette. Also, we have 2 being built in Midland right now, and quite happily, we have an agreement with Stripes, which has about 600 convenience food store conventional fueling stations in Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. So we have an agreement with them, and we're actually adding CNG capability to their conventional locations and convenience food stores. And our vision is sort of long-term, instead of building standalone stations where you don't have the coffee and the restrooms, et cetera, that hopefully with all the good things that are happening with Love's and OnQ and Travel Centers of America, et cetera, that the future of natural gas as a transportation fuel is going to be just an additional product slate to the conventional fueling stations out there. I think you'd mentioned, Rich, earlier, 150,000 stations. Many of them don't have the footprint, but I think long-term on the inter and interstate corridors and also in the metro areas, we're going to see more and more of the Stripes and the Loves and others that are really starting to step up, and the Shells and Mobiles, we hope. So we're quite excited about that collaboration with Stripes, and so we're really opening up all of our private stations to also support the industry, and quite excited about the prospects of that.
Okay, Norma?
You know, Rich, to your question, I think our strategy's in some points similar to Frank's. I guess it's a sophisticated one that says we'll commit our take-or-pay fuel volume to a retailer. Yes, we could place fueling on site at our own property, but instead we'd rather want to see that retailer succeed. So that's led to, in Oklahoma, for instance, you had 9 stations with one particular retailer in 2011, 2012 another 10 stations with another one, that now you have 63 total stations in that market that single-handedly we've worked with. So if you think about it, you know, that's the path that, you know, next week is the National Association of Convenience Stores. And if you think about what Frank described with Stripes and other peers to Stripes, where you're not reinventing the wheel. You know, they've already acquired the real estate, they've already done the traffic count study, they've already have some brand equity there with whoever's coming there. So on the light duty space, I think our investments have been really on the retail side and ensuring that the multiple of 5 to 10 that they can make on a profit side, selling and marketing CNG is attractive enough for them to take on that incremental cost of conversion. So, or cost of placing equipment. So I'd say our strategy has been one that is targeted to the public space with retailers, and one that has evolved, and sometimes at need, we'll place fueling on site at our own properties. But at the end of the day, I think that's the fastest way to deployment, and one that I know is shared by many other EMPs.
Okay, Curtis?
And so I would say our strategy has been one of collaboration. It is not our intention to own and operate, you know, Noble branded stations in any way, shape, or form. Rather kind of like I know what Lynn has done in the Texas Triangle and what Norman's talking about in working with retailers. We've been working with a project called the Weld County Smart Energy Initiative, where actually Noble, Anadarko, and Encana have all contributed co-funding towards some federal money that Weld County has gotten for congestion mitigation air quality. And that has catalyzed the installation of 4 stations, 2 that are owned and operated by Mansfield and 2 that are owned and operated by Zeit Energy. That are starting to create a clean energy corridor along Highway 85 in Weld County north of Denver. And so, you know, we're not building stations, but we're catalyzing that kind of development. You know, Noble's a little bit fortunate in terms of our footprint. We're not operating in really remote areas like some of the places where Apache is, so we're able to do that outside Denver. And then our other area of operation that we're just dipping our toe into is the Marcellus. And again, there's a lot of activity up there that we can participate in rather than having to build that infrastructure ourselves. We are in one instance doing a project in Weld County where we're buying school buses for several school districts in the county, and we are going to build a station as part of one of those projects, but our intention is that we're going to give that to the school district or to a third party to operate. That won't be a Noble-owned station. It will be simply, again, infrastructure that we will have facilitated the development of.
Thank you, Curtis.
David, I was going to add also, I was thinking about it, we were talking about our strategy here. I really want to, thank everybody in the room. Talk about results a little bit. Collaborating like this, we're actually seeing, we had some very conservative goals when we started out 2 years ago, saying let's get 550 heavy-duty vehicles on the road in Texas. Let's get 13 new stations. Without a dollar of government money going out, we have 26 new stations in Texas. We have 1,200 heavy-duty natural gas vehicles on the road, and that's a result of the acceleration that when we're all working together. And like I said, we've got these grant programs, and we are expecting new stations and new trucks with that money, but working together really does get the trucks on the road faster, and we have those results today.
Yeah, that's really nice. Thanks. From our perspective, we do both. We build stations in our communities and support our fleet, or if it's a good enough market, others will build those stations and we support them. And then we're really working on our supply chain and customers and building mobile fueling solutions for them for LNG. So we're trying to get high horsepower and our pipe haulers, our water haulers, our oil haulers converted to walk the talk. And all these companies are doing the exact same thing there, reaching into our supply chain to bring them forward so we can have more market for the vendors here and more products for the OEMs, more orders. So it's been interesting the last couple of years. We got time for one more question. I would actually like to stay up here another hour and ask more because I'm hoping there's a couple more good questions, but at least one short one.
Hi, John Howell with Westport Light Duty. I'd be curious if you could tell us what you think our priorities should be as vehicle providers, and I'll make it easy. I'll give you multiple choice. Lower prices, greater variety and availability of greater variety of vehicles, improved quality, reliability, and durability, or perhaps quicker and easier access to sales and service. So of those four things, and I know the answer is somewhat all of the above, but of those four things, where would you like to see the vehicle providers put their emphasis?
David, I'd jump in there. So I think you've seen the announcements from the great leadership that's happened in Oklahoma and in Colorado with the MOU. So John, to your question, if you think about a vehicle that has crossover appeal that can be driven by these states, whether it's in Maine or in Wyoming or in Kentucky or in Tennessee that have signed on this MOU, I think there's an opportunity there because it could be a fleet vehicle that's used by these states. It's a vehicle that could have consumer appeal, and it's a vehicle that, again, hopefully is part of a market segment that has a tremendous upside. So you have all this pent-up demand there that isn't available because there's no true solution in the marketplace. So I would lean on the request that the MOU had on the sedan side, and I know our fleet, for instance, would be one of the first ones out there to purchase that, both in our employee leasing program, in our program that we have with buyback of those vehicles, as well as in our particular fleet. So that would be as clear directions I could give. I know many here in the industry would support that very quickly as well.
Anybody else want to throw in? It was a good question, I think.
Out of the laundry list of 4 items that I heard, John's right, it is all of the above, but I think the lower cost and the greater variety. And I don't think those two are mutually exclusive because a lot of components are common in things like tanks. Hopefully with volume and maybe some improved technology, we can drive those costs down. But I think those two would be the higher priority from my perspective.
Frank?
One other comment that I failed to talk about before with the OEMs, I think it's really a big step change here. The fact they've come to market with OEM products means they're going to have dealerships trained from coast to coast to maintain vehicles. We've had wonderful support and experience in the past with the upfitters, which are still going to be a very important part of our industry for years to come. But now that the OEMs have product where they're going to have to get their service centers trained on maintenance of CNG vehicles, I think it's going to really help the demand because now people don't have to worry about if I've got a problem and I'm 3 states over on vacation. They have trained, certified mechanics that can really attend to the systems in a lot greater number than we've had in the past. And I just think the OEMs need to be applauded for not only bringing products to market, but also training your service centers to be able to maintain the product.
Yeah, I love my F-250, but it'd be nice to have a vehicle that could fit in my garage.
That's nice. So all the above, John, and you probably listed them in order, but we can't sacrifice quality and safety for price, would be my comment. And then it's in that order as you described them. All right, I know Steve's going to pull the thing off my neck. There's 3 more questions, but I'd love to keep going, but I know we got a schedule.
A lot of questions I know people would like to go further with you on, but
So let's, again, appreciate the guys, the gals that came up here.